You know, some stories are just so big, so epic, they kind of get lost in the fog of history. This is one of those stories. It's got everything: an ancient faith, a skeptical messenger, and a journey to what was, quite literally, the edge of the known world. And it all begins with a mystery. 2,000 years. Just let that sink in for a moment. For 2 millennia, a Christian community hasn't just been hanging on, they've been thriving in a land thousands of miles from where that faith was even born. It's an incredible story, and it all revolves around one central question. So, how in the world did that happen? I mean, really, how does a message from first-century Galilee make it all the way to India's Malabar Coast and actually stick? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we can't start with a map. We have to start with a man.
Okay, let's meet our protagonist. And what's so fascinating about him is that he wasn't defined by some kind of bold, unshakable certainty. No, quite the opposite. He was defined by his profound doubt. He was a practical man, a man of skill.
This was a guy who got his hands dirty. He wasn't about lofty philosophy or abstract ideas. He understood the world through touch. You know, the feel of a fishing net slipping through his fingers, the grain of a piece of wood he was working on. And that grounding in reality is absolutely crucial to his whole story.
And his name was Thomas. Some of his friends called him Didymus, which just means the twin. But that's not how history remembers him, is it? We know him as the one who demanded physical proof, the one who had to literally touch to believe. And that legendary doubt? Well, that's the engine that drives this entire narrative.
And right there, that's the incredible irony, isn't it? The man most famous for his doubt would become the one to carry a message of unbelievable faith farther than almost anyone else. This is just wild. Okay, so let's take a look at the world he was about to sail into.
So, picture this. It's around the year 52 AD. Thomas steps off a boat, his feet hitting the sand on the shores of ancient India. And what he finds there, it's not some quiet, isolated village. No way. He's just walked right into a bustling, thriving global hub.
See, the Malabar Coast, what we call Kerala today, was like a superhighway for ancient world trade. For centuries, ships were docking there from Arabia, from Persia, from Greece, and even from Rome. I mean, the black pepper from this one coast was worth more than gold back in Roman markets. So this was a place that was used to strangers. It was used to new people, new languages, and definitely new ideas.
But just think about the culture shock for a second. The sheer scale of the jump he made. Thomas comes from a world where people speak Aramaic, where everyone's living under Roman rule. He lands in a place of deep Sanskrit scholarship, ruled by its own kings, the Cheras, and built on a really complex social caste system. The gap between his world and this one, it was absolutely massive.
So, what do? You're one guy, a total outsider, you don't have an army, you don't have any political connections. How do you even begin to light that first fire in a brand new land? Well, his strategy was actually brilliant in its simplicity. He didn't just start with complete strangers. He looked for a connection, for some kind of common ground. And it turns out there was already an ancient, well-established Jewish community living right there on the Malabar Coast. Traders, whose families might have been there for centuries. With them, he had a starting point. He could talk about Jerusalem, about Passover, about shared prophets. They had a shared history.
And here's where it gets really clever. This is the crucial point. Thomas didn't try to hide his skepticism. He leaned into it. He basically used it as his superpower. Imagine him saying, "Look, I get it. I didn't believe any of this either. In fact, I was the biggest doubter you'll ever meet. But let me tell you what I saw." That kind of raw honesty, that's incredibly powerful. It's hard to turn away from a story like that. And it worked. Out of those initial conversations, a community began to form. The stories say that a few Jewish families were the first to be baptized, becoming the very core of this new group. They took on a name, Nasrani, which means followers of Jesus of Nazareth. And incredibly, it's a name they still carry to this very day.
So that first small group was like the first spark, and from that spark, his mission just grew. Tradition tells us he went on to found 7 distinct communities, 7 churches, all up and down the coast.
It's like he was lighting 7 lanterns in the darkness, one by one.
But, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Not by a long shot. As he started moving inland to places like Polior, which was a major center for the Brahmin priestly class, well, he hit a wall of resistance. He was seen as a threat. And you can understand why, right? Here's this total outsider challenging a social and religious system that had been in place for thousands of years.
But the oral histories, the stories passed down for generations, are just packed with these breakthrough moments. There are accounts of miraculous healings. There's one famous story where he supposedly threw a handful of water into the air and it just hung there, defying gravity, stunning everyone who saw it. And it was moments like that, the stories say, that convinced even some high-caste Brahmins to hear him out and then to get baptized, which, you have to understand, was a radical act that would have instantly cut them off from their families, their status, their entire world.
So, this new faith taking root in India, what did it even look like? It couldn't just be a carbon copy of what was happening back in the Middle East. It had to adapt. It began a kind of conversation between two cultures, and out of that conversation came a symbol that is completely unique in the entire world.
This is it. The Mar Thomas Liba, the St. Thomas Cross. Now, right away, you can see it's not the cross most people in the West are used to. It's an older Persian style. But the most important part, the most incredible part, is what's at the bottom. It's rising up out of a lotus flower, one of the most sacred and powerful symbols in all of Indian spirituality.
Just look at what that image is saying. This is not a symbol of conquest. It is a symbol of dialogue. You've got the cross, this new message from a distant land, but it's not crashing down from above. It's growing up out of the lotus, out of the soil of India itself. It's a visual way of saying this faith wasn't forced on people. It took root, and it bloomed right here. It's beautiful.
Thomas's journey would eventually take him all the way across the subcontinent, over to the eastern Coromandel coast. And it was there, tradition says, around the year 72 AD, that his mission finally came to an end. He was martyred on a hill, killed in the very land he'd adopted as his own.
But his death wasn't the end of the story, not even close. In fact, it was just the beginning of an echo that is still ringing out to this very day.
Fast forward to today. Right now, there are millions of people in India who identify as St. Thomas Christians, or Nasrani. They are the direct, living, breathing spiritual descendants of those first tiny communities. Those 7 lanterns that Thomas lit, well, today they become a city of light.
And what's just mind-blowing is how much of their ancient heritage is still there. This is one of the oldest continuously existing Christian communities on the entire planet. For centuries, their church services were in Syriac, a language that's basically a cousin to the Aramaic that Thomas himself would have spoken. They have traditions that are so old, they come from a time before the church in Rome or the West had much influence at all. It's like a time capsule.
So in the end, when you look at it all, this entire 2,000-year history, the ancient chants, that beautiful cross growing from the lotus, the faith of millions of people, it is all the lasting footprint of one man, a fisherman who demanded proof, got it, and then spent the rest of his life walking to the far edge of the world just to tell people about it.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other epic stories, what other incredible legacies are all around us, just hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered?